food security for many Indians still remains a distant dream. This year again, India continues to do poorly at the Global Hunger Index. India was ranked 94 out of 107 countries. In fact, neighboring countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh and Nepal have fared better than India. Global Hunger Index, or GHI, is determined by 4 indicators: undernourishment, child wasting, child stunting, and child mortality. It has given India a score of 27.2, and this puts India under serious category. Factor this: India, which is home to 1.38 billion people, around 14% of its population, is undernourished. Analysts say that every 5th child born in India is in Uttar Pradesh. India has a high level of malnutrition in India's most populous state. This brings a drastic impact on India's GHI stats. Experts blame poor implementation processes, lack of effective monitoring, siloed approach in tackling malnutrition, and poor performance by large states as a major reason for India's low ranking. South Asia has the highest wasting rate for any region, and India is the worst performer. Even though India has one of the most impressive portfolios of programs and policies of nutrition in books, ground reality tells a different story. The data might be alarming, but till issues like inequality and poverty remain, India's fight against hunger will be a long-drawn one. Bureau Report, Democracy News Live, New Delhi.
While India, like rest of the world, fights the menace of coronavirus, millions of children are still going hungry to bed. 14% of India's population is undernourished. These are startling figures, but what is the ground reality? What is the government doing for the future of these children? Let's bring in our special panel today. Joining me is Bhogal. She's the director of Oxfam India. Also joining me on the show is Palasha Nagpal. She is an assistant consultant at Oxford Policy Management. Also joining us on the show is Achal Sharma. She's the founder of an NGO called Wheels of Happiness. Thank you for joining me, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beginning with you, Rana, how do you read these figures and this report? India's ranking is not much of an issue as much as the indicators that say that there is a huge problem when it comes to child stunting and child wasting.
So, Jessica, I would say ranking is also an issue because look at where we stand. We stand at 94 out of 107 countries, with Bangladesh ahead of us at 75, Myanmar at 78, Pakistan at 88, and China, with a country that we compete with, is one of the 17 countries that's less than 5 on this index. So the index is important, and the index, as you rightly said, measured not just undernourished people in the population, but wasting of children, stunting of children, and under 5 mortality rates. And all of them we score badly. You can see that from the index. And you know, it's really worrying because it's also showing the poor investment we are making in our future, because wasted and stunted children also mean a poor quality population in terms of the mental abilities, the skills, and that has implications on, you know, we all love this term gross domestic product and growth. It will have implications, and that's why we have not been able to, you know, compete globally in the global markets also because of our very, very poor quality unemployable workforce. So it is a very worrying report, and I think we must pay good attention to it. Although I did read when it was released that a lot of people in the government, you know, said, no, the report is using old data sets and it's, you know, not the right representation of the current reality. But a lot of people who, like us, who work on the ground, we know that what this report is saying is not very far from the truth.
Right. And Palasha, what would you interpret from this report? There is a fine print to read. What do you make of this report, and what are the key factors that determine India's hunger crisis?
Of course, the report findings are extremely worrying and they don't paint a promising picture, and a lot needs to be done. But from the way I look at India's performance when it comes to nutritional outcomes, I look at it as a demand and supply play. So there's a supply of schemes and interventions by the government like the Janani Suraksha Yojana, the home-based newborn care, the midwifery initiative, the Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, so on and so forth, that provides incentives, that provides counseling, that provides interventions such as vaccinations and so on and so forth. So that's the supply side of it. And certainly the supply side has systemic constraints and drawbacks, and the implementation is not perfect on ground. That's one reality and one part of the puzzle. But the other part of the puzzle is the demand side, which is not talked about as much. But for a country which is as diverse and as socio-culturally complex as India, I think the demand side factors also need to be taken into consideration. I'll tell you this with a simple example. For instance, if you create a healthcare facility in a tribal area, which is very close to, as in it does not create any problems of access, offers quality, offers affordability, and all the factors that are important for good healthcare and a proper institutionalized delivery. And as we all know, that neonatal complications and maternal complications are one of the leading causes of child mortality as well as maternal mortality. So that's the supply side factor. Then we talk about the demand side factor. What if, and this is from literature on ground, there are certain communities, and a large number of such communities do exist in the large states with high total fertility rates and with the higher population and poor socioeconomic indicators such as UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, where delivering a child is considered normal. And this is even more so in rural areas. And therefore, it's considered a process that should take place at home without any external care, without the need for visiting a facility. What do you do about that? So what I'm trying to say here is that an understanding of the poor nutritional outcomes in India necessitates an understanding of the behavioral, social, and cultural factors at play. Another example would be the gender inequality. India is one of the poor performers when it comes to gender inequality. And even though it has higher income levels, better standards of living on average as compared to sub-Saharan African countries, we're still among the same ranks when it comes to the global hunger index. And one of the key reasons for that is the high prevalence of gender inequality in India as compared to, say, a sub-Saharan country. And why this happens is that on average in India, because of gender discrimination, women have a lower BMI and suffer from maternal malnutrition, as a result of which they produce children that are low birth weight, that are very low birth weight, which is one of the key causes of stunting and wasting and undernutrition in children. And that sort of pushes children into a vicious cycle compounded by other factors such as poverty, low education levels, low access to resources and healthcare, so on and so forth. So any analysis of our nutritional outcomes has to focus on the demand side factors, has to focus on the social, cultural, behavioral factors, particularly gender inequality in India. Interestingly, one of the things that we say in our development circles is that by discriminating against a woman as a country, we're putting our sons in jeopardy, because the children that these women produce, irrespective whether it's a male child or a female child, are undernourished and susceptible to mortality. That's it from my side about this.
Right, Achal, you worked with children. You feed thousands of people, not just children, on the streets and villages every day. What has your experience been like?
My experience during the pandemic, actually, it is very painful for me, Jessica, because we have seen so many incidents where people are almost lying on road in slums, and there are people who don't have food since 3 days, 5 days, 10 days. So people are there who are walking throughout the day and night, but still they don't have food at that time. So we were working like almost 14 to 18 hours my team is working, and we can't express that pain in words, because that is something which made me cry so many times when I am about to have my food also. Even my mother is saying that, the best you can do, you are doing already, right? But you have to control yourself. So we have seen such a experience, and we face people where people are fighting on religion, people are fighting on something which is very silly, I would say. People are saying, I'm saving money for my kids education, my kids doctors bills and all that, blah blah. Why I should help underprivileged or the daily wages. And my what I always say, people are not asking you or someone to go out or help thousands of people or hundreds of people. If you even help one person who need a food, just one meal, it will also add lots of value. So yeah, my experience is this during the COVID-19, almost 120 days, and we worked, Jessica, I would like to tell you, like, we work in 11 different states. I don't know that we are able to work there with the help of volunteers. We are able to work in Jharkhand, Andaman, Bihar, Kashmir, states like Mumbai, and uh, we are very happy that people come forward to support us this time in a very large number.
Incredible work there, Achal. More power to you. Coming to you, Rano, as Achal was pointing out, the pandemic has been difficult for all of us. And, when we talk about the hunger crisis, do you think the COVID-19 pandemic has had an effect on the current crisis that we have?
Absolutely, a huge effect. See, 92% of our workforce works in what we call the informal sector, or not necessarily, sector is misleading. They are informal workers. Even in the formal sector, they are employed as casual workers or through contractors. So they have absolutely zero social security benefits, zero health coverage, and they literally lead a hand to mouth existence. Now, with the COVID and the lockdown that followed, a lot of people of this 92% lost the work that they were doing. Many of them live in rural areas. They are daily, wage laborers, agricultural laborers, small farmers. They also suffered as a result of this because everything came to a standstill. See, you remember the markets were shut, and transportation was not available. Vegetables were being thrown on the road because they couldn't sell them. Milk had to be disposed of. So the crisis hit everybody. And because of this informal nature of the workforce, it really took the biggest, I think, hit. A lot of people who belong to the salaried people also lost their jobs. But at least the hunger crisis does not hit salaried class as much. At least people could draw into their PPFs and EPFs and make do with the cuts in the salaries that they faced. So the crisis definitely intensified the hunger crisis. And I would not like to use just hunger, but it's hunger and nutrition crisis. So it's not just about food security, it's also nutrition security. And also we must remember it's also about dietary diversity. Our public distribution system distributes wheat and rice, but that's not enough for nutrition security. You need some money in your hands to be able to buy the vegetables, the oils, the masalas, and other supplementary food items to be able to enjoy a complete diet. And also studies during the pandemic have shown that people were skipping meals. It's women, and I think the point that was made earlier also, women were facing greater crisis because in a patriarchal society, it is the role of women, it's expected of women to feed the men and the boys in the household first, and then the women and girls follow. Girls and women, I would say. So and given that I think it's about 51% of our women are anemic, and with this kind of a food crisis, the situation has become worse. And mind you, it has become much worse even across certain caste groups and certain social religious groups. So the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribe, the poorer categories among, say, the Muslims also, and the Hindus, the poor also have faced a major crisis because of lack of work and money in their hands. So, you also read stories about our Food Corporation of India godowns overflowing. Actually, every year, a lot of grain stored there rots and is eaten by rodents. And a lot of economists were advising that government should do free distribution of food grains at this time of crisis, which government did in some states for some time. But the crisis is so deep that just 3 months of support is not enough. They also did some cash transfers in the Jan accounts of women. Not all women got it, but it was a measly amount of 500 rupees per month for 3 months, which is nothing considering the food inflation we see in our country. So some efforts were made, but I think the crisis has been huge. So it's a health, hunger, and economic crisis all put together. And on top of that, some of the states during this pandemic period experienced cyclones. You should remember Amphan that hit West Bengal. Some states experience floods, Bihar and Assam. And so these kind of other crises have also continued. So it's a combination of not just a hunger crisis, but it's health, hunger, economic, and I would say climate induced crisis also that has hit. And one last point I want to make about the rural India. We assume that all is hunky dory in rural India, and the employment rates are increasing because this was close to the harvest time. But the fact is that even in rural India, a large number of our farmers are small and marginal farmers. They're able to grow paddy and rice or food for maximum of 4 to 6 months. For the rest of the period, they depend on wage labor. So the crisis is deep and will require some deep response from the government. Yeah, thanks.
Right, will require a deep response from the government and the schemes, their implementation. Going to Palasha, you've worked on the ground in various states. You've done a lot of surveys as well, and as you were pointing out earlier, that there have been factors of caste inequalities and religion that also make possibly contribute to the current crisis as well. Do help us explain how those factors work, and what was your experience like, and what did you gather?
Thank you for your question. So directly answering your question, I worked in Jharkhand for the tribal families, which I mean, to start with, have the incidence of stunting and wasting in these tribal families, in the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe families in the remote areas of Jharkhand, is almost 5 times as high as a non-tribal family, which makes them a vulnerable category. So in India, there are multiple social and cultural factors at play, which include caste, religion, if you're from a tribal family or not, if what is the degree of awareness, what is the degree of education, what wealth quartile you belong to, and so on and so forth. And these factors sort of compound the existing deprivations from poor nutritional outcomes in families, in households in India. And to tell you, to lend further credence to what Ms. Bhogal said, data from the ground in Jharkhand, citing the example of Jharkhand, shows that during the Kharif season, which was the monsoon season, which is ongoing right now, farmers have decided to reduce the amount of land that they devoted to the cultivation of cash crops, which got them income, and they've increased the area under cultivation for subsistence crops, which they need for their survival, which includes rice, maize, wheat, and so on and so forth. So firstly, that poses a nutritional, that does not provide them dietary diversity, that does not give them enough food for consumption. And the second factor, that the second way this creates a problem is that because there's been a lot of in-migration in the big states in India, such as Jharkhand, Bihar, and UP and Maharashtra, where a lot of wage laborers have come back to their houses, whereas the income levels have either remained the same or have actually gone down. It means that the number of people eating from the same household has increased. So that creates a problem in terms of it definitely has a direct impact on food consumption. So it has a direct impact on hunger, and it has an indirect impact on nutrition because it detrimentally impacts their nutritional security. So these are the short-term impacts that we're expecting to see. But the long-term impacts are also something that we will see in the coming years in the agricultural sector, in the rural sector, which employs over 60% of India's workforce. And that is the fact that with lower availability of incomes, with lower availability of food, with lower dietary diversity, in these circumstances, the women are going to get an even smaller share of the household income and resources. And by resources here, I mean food, which is likely to impact the maternal BMI, maternal malnutrition, and again push us further deep into the cycle of low birth weight, poor nutritional outcomes for children, and affect the rankings as well as our performance in the global hunger index.
Right, Palasha, very informative point there. Coming to you, Achal, did you face any difficulties or perhaps obstacles while you were going out doing your work during the pandemic or before the pandemic started?
Yes, I do face couple of difficulties. One is for sure still I'm going through cancer treatment. So first I have to take care of myself and help people also. So that is the biggest challenge I faced during the distribution. But somehow I'm able to manage that. After that, there are lots of challenge where people are fighting for the religion. People are telling us to not go there. That's a Muslim area. That's a Hindu area, and people are also telling us why don't you feed animals, why you are feeding humans. So there are different opinions are coming on us, but I believe my entire team believe that this is not the time to focus on these challenges. Rather than reply to them, it's better we increase our performance and we help more and more people. So our focus is there basically. So that's the reason challenges are there, but they didn't affect us that much because we are very much focused what we are going to do and how many people and how we are going to help people who are in bad shape and who don't have anything to eat or sleep or anything, because that is more important for us at that moment.
Right, and coming to you, Rano, you've seen the report. I've seen the report. We've seen India's ranking each year. It either goes up or down. Beyond the rankings, the factors that are mentioned in it are something we should be worried about. But the report highlights only a limited issue. What are we missing, and what is our government not doing to address these issues, and what exactly needs to be done?
So I think now we are in a world that has been impacted by COVID. And therefore, the response of the government has to factor that in. So while government has a lot of schemes and programs, there is something called National Nutrition Mission, which was rechristened as Poshan Abhiyan. And this was launched in 2017 with the focus to reduce stunting in the 0 to 6 year age group. Now, the whole objective was to reduce stunting from 38.4% to 25% by 2022. And we are still around, I think, 37.4%. That's right. And one of the things that a study done by a Harvard University Department of Statistics person is showing that misuse of funds is one big factor that has impacted this scheme. And this person covered 543 parliamentary constituencies and found that the results varied between reducing stunting to 13.7% to maintaining and going up at 61.7%. So, how you use the resources also determines the impact of a well-intentioned program. There is another program which is about maternity benefit program, which gives maternity benefit of 6,000 rupees in 3 installments, and you have to fulfill those 3 stages to be eligible for that benefit. You have to register your pregnancy, you have to have one antenatal checkup, and then you have to register the birth. So that's one part. But the other part, and which actually is mind boggling, is that the application itself is 23 pages long. It requires and see, people who are trying to get this maternity benefit of meager 6,000 rupees are not people like you and me. These are poor people, these are illiterate people. So simplifying the application process is very important. Why should you have a 23-page long form? And then on top of that, the requirements of their Aadhaar card, the name on the Aadhaar card should match the name in the bank accounts. And another interesting thing, that you need your husband's Aadhaar card number as well. Now, it's not that all women who are pregnant are have husbands. Some of them could have lost their husbands. Some of them may be single women, unmarried women. So what about that? So, I think even if we grant that majority of women are married, this program was able to reach only 31% of the eligible intended beneficiaries that registered. So there are huge implementation challenges in our country. The last mile delivery of programs, of very well intentioned program, is very poor. Apart from the biases that exist in the delivery personnel. So like Aanchal was sharing about this person from the government system who was telling her to not to give food to Muslims, you find that, and the moment you go down to villages and blocks, you will find that mentality there as well. And therefore, women and people from certain caste groups, from certain religious backgrounds, will not be able to access the benefits that are meant for them. So, the issues are complex. I would say the entire chain needs to be repaired for last mile delivery of these services and programs. So, there's no short answer to your question, unfortunately. And the other part I want to talk about is that if you remember 3 years ago, when Arvind Subramaniam was the chief economic advisor, they had introduced the concept of universal basic income. And then later on, before this general election, both Congress and the Bharatiya Janata Party had announced some kind of a cash transfer scheme. The BJP had announced a cash transfer to farmers. I think it was again 6,000 rupees. And Congress had announced a Nyay scheme where they said they will transfer cash. During the COVID crisis, under the Jan Dhan Yojana, 1,500 rupees was transferred in the bank accounts of women who had bank accounts, which was 500 rupees per month, which is a measly amount. I mean, you know the kind of food inflation we have in our country. But cash transfers has been talked of as one very important intervention. Giving money in the hands of poor so that they can buy the necessary food items that they need is absolutely critical. Creating jobs for people, because people don't want to live on charity. People do. These are people, when I say that 92% of the workforce is informal, people want to live a life of dignity. They want to earn and they want to feed their families in a dignified manner. They don't want charity. And therefore, I think it's the responsibility of the state as well as the private sector, I would say, to create those opportunities. We have had a jobless growth in this country. And again, there was a data that was shared. And of course, data has become more and more scarce in our country, that we are going through a 45-year low in terms of job creation. So we are in a deep, not just a hunger crisis, but a health, hunger, and economic crisis. And with climate change and these other kind of factors that keep hitting us, we are in a very deep crisis, and this requires a very deep response, I would say. Yeah.
Right. Thank you there, Rano. Coming to you, Palasha. Do you think that our policy initiatives and our schemes have failed to tackle the current hunger crisis? And if so, then what needs to be done?
Thank you for your question. So what I feel is that I don't think that the schemes per se have failed completely. I think that progress is being made. Supply side constraints exist. They function in extremely complex socio-economic dynamics and are affected by a lot of demand side constraints as well. But yes, definitely there is scope for these schemes and interventions to be designed in a manner that are more acceptable to the people whom they are being provided to. And it is for this, it's important to consider the demand side factors as to what the woman wants. What does the child want? Is the woman or the household of the child willing to accept what is being given? How is it being received? So on and so forth. So, further moving on, in addition to what I'm trying to say, is that from a policy intervention point of view, the one size fits all, the same kind of intervention being provided to all states, irrespective of the socio-cultural factors at play, irrespective of the economic status of the different states, will not take us a long way. What we need in order to make a serious dent in the nutritional outcome scenario in India is a more focused approach at the state level, wherein the more investments and more attention is paid to nutritional outcomes in states that are performing poorly, states that are performing poorly in terms of gender inequality and have poor health and nutritional outcomes. That's one way to go forth. And a focused approach in terms of focusing on households that are vulnerable, such as single parent households, widowed households, tribal families, families belonging to scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and so on and so forth. And another way to go forth in terms of interventions is to really focus on the micro interventions. For instance, the government of India has the NRC, or the nutrition rehabilitation centers, where acutely malnourished children are taken. They're taken care of. They're provided the medicines, the supplements, and the food in order to ensure that they move out from that category, and then they're sent back home. But because of the lack of follow up, the household factors at play sort of push the child back into the malnutrition cycle, as a result of which the intervention sort of fails. So what we need to look at here is to really design each intervention so that it follows through, so that once the child is pulled out of the malnutrition cycle, the child isn't pushed back into it again. And the third, and an overall strategy that the government of India needs to employ, is an explicit focus on gender equality, which is critically linked to the poor nutritional outcomes in India.
Right. Thank you, there, Palash. You, Achal, what is your message to the people watching this show? What would you like them to do? At least help you with certain initiatives, or can do individual volunteering perhaps to help tackle this at their end?
Jessica, you know that our organization is not that big. Before COVID, we were working only for 200 people. That is also, I'm using my own funds and taking help from friends, right? During the COVID, people come forward, they supported us, and we are able to help 11 states with a huge number of meals. So my only request to everyone, please help people first who are your near ones, like your guards or your households, and people who are near to your areas. You don't need to go very far to help anyone, because I strongly agree with Ranu ma'am, what Ranu ma'am says. People need job, they don't need a charity. If you can create some employment for them, you can give even small job or some daily basis dihadi work, that will be enough for them. So create job opportunities and try to help them whatever little you can. That's the only thing I would request to everyone, because this is the time which
Right.
is really, really bad.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Achal, out as much of you watching this show. Millions of children, as we told you earlier, are going to bed. Stats us and give us a reality to think of, and let's hope that this country and its children is bright. Thank you, ladies, for joining me on the program and giving me your
Thank you.
insights.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
See you all. Bye.